possibilities.
I'd love to hear from you what you see as the biggest risks, potential risks from the emergence of AGI, where things could go wrong, what we should be watching out for and attentive to that helps steer us towards a more beneficial future.
I think that, okay, so we, like take for example the sci-fi imagination of the Jetsons. Like you have this idea that like when robots are here, like in the future, that like they have the family robot that does all the cooking and cleaning, and then the family can, like, we have this idea that the robots will do all the work we don't want to do so we can do the work that we'd like to do. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we actually are going to be facing is the feeling, I'm not saying it's actual, but the feeling of human uselessness. There's at the origin of cybernetics, Norbert Wiener wrote this book called The Human Use of Human Beings. So the idea of what I mean by human uselessness is like, or the redundancy of the human. Like, for example, if I'm really good at writing articles, or if I'm really good at making podcasts, or if I'm really good at writing music, or if I'm really good at drawing or whatever, and the AI can actually do that to some degree, then there is actually the challenge of, well, what is left for human beings? So there is that challenge. So I'm not saying that will be the challenge we face, but I think that's one of the things to watch out for is the recreation of actual new possibilities that humans naturally feel motivating. And I guess that brings us back to the key is like, is motivation, is drive, is how can we create a society in which humans feel motivated and driven to participate in it? And I guess connected to that is the increasing isolation and feeling like social breakdown is occurring, in part because of screens. I think that's another thing to watch out for, and that's something I watch out every morning when I go on the metro. What percentage of people are on screens? And it's usually above 90%. So I think that we become just thick, and and screens are brilliant as well. There's a reason we're all on screens. It's because it's like they're almost magical. It transforms our physical social relationships so fundamentally that I think we should like watch out for it. Like we should think about it. Like it does bring us the challenge of, why do we come together at all? Like, for example, I can download all the movies I want to watch. I don't want to go to the movie theater anymore. Could create a reality in which we don't need to interact with each other or go outside. And I think the challenge is, why do we want to come together? And when we come together, what do we want to do together? I think that's the question that's also been motivating me. So like, for example, at Philosophy Portal, we also do retreats. And we ask ourselves, like, when we do a retreat, how do we want to do this retreat? How do we want to do this get together in a way that's bringing out everything that we've been working on or can't do online? That's a question. Like, what can't we do online? What can't we do on the screen? Then
I love that. Yes. It reminds me again of the conversation about biological evolution in children. There's we're at a cultural point of, I termed it, and I hope this is okay, it's selfishness, where, it's like, if I have a child, then I won't be able to spend as much time on my screen, right? Or it seems to endanger, or be able to do as much research and achieve the Nobel Prize I'm aiming for, or recognition, whatnot. And there's a selfishness toward the screen time as well, right? I can look up anything I'm interested in, and nobody around me has to care about it or know about it or have any meaning around it. I can watch the thing that I want to watch it in a very individual way, and cultivating what I feel is important and what I want to be doing. And how do we move past it? We're definitely experiencing a loneliness epidemic. We're experiencing empathy decay. We're not noticing how, when we don't practice connection, the connection needs to be practiced, right? And this is why we send children to preschools. This is why we socialize, and it's so enjoyable, but it needs to be practiced. And we're not, because it's so selfishly enjoyable to screen instead. And there can be great value in learning and growth there too. But how do we balance those for cultural, global, and individual?
when it's because social life is inherently involving friction. Like it's constitutive. Friction is constitutive to social life. And I think the screen is a representation of a frictionless world, like where there's no more possible. Like, how can we create a zero friction environment? Well, you create a zero friction environment through individuals cultivating their own isolated meaning on a screen. And I think that, yeah, like you're emphasizing the loneliness epidemic, the empathy decay. I think back on, you're saying, why we send children to preschool. So I was reflecting on, actually, when I was in um, grades 1 through 5, I was struggling immensely with being bullied or getting teased or picked on, right? But like at the same time, that was difficult. But and I wouldn't be the same person without those experiences. But it was tough going through it, and it was tough for my mom when I'd come home from school and I was chased home from school. So yeah, so I think this is why and probably, if we think Gen X or millennials are struggling with this, I think I've already seen enough evidence that like Zoomers and the younger generations are struggling more with it, because I'm just grateful in many ways that when I was in high school there was no social media. I got Facebook my first year of college. And I couldn't imagine, and that's actually my biggest fear as a parent, is not my relationship to screens, because even though like it is a problem, like I'm an adult and I can work with that problem, but I struggle to think how parents navigate children and screens today.
And cold hard. It's hard. Yeah, no, my son, it's amazing. How do we guided with intention to have screens and iPads even when he was very young, and to put limits on it? But we recognize that he would need to be screen native and I want to pause there. I want to say that I'm so inspired and interested in, there's so many people, especially folks who have only thought to a limited extent about AI and AGI, and the biggest fears are, the gray goo scenario or the Terminator scenario. And it's like people come up to Desdemona, our robot, all the time, and half joking, they're like, "You're not going to kill us all, right, Desi?" Right? And it's like, right now, if you can traverse up 3 steps, you're completely safe from her, because she can't. She just won't Terminator you. She just can't, even if her AI went haywire, right? But we don't look at our screens and our chatbot interactions with the same kind of studiousness, that recognizing the very subtle dangers there. There's this identity challenge, this economic challenge. There's this empathy decay and loneliness. There's this fractured reality, right? We can't agree anymore on what reality is, and we don't really have to talk with people who disagree with us anymore, right? Algorithmically, platforms have helped us to find our tribe and never have to leave them, and only show us what we already think and agree with, and reinforce that. And these are the dangers that are sneaking in that I think that AGI can be designed to address and help us move in different directions, maturate and connect and grow beyond economic as value. But it takes intention. It takes intention to do that. I'd love to touch on, I think that you have a spiritual focus and dimension as well. There's this component of wonder and awe and transcendence and unknowing that AI can also eliminate, can make it look like we know everything or can know everything, and make the mysteries of life perhaps less mysterious. I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI and the spiritual nature and evolution of humanity.
I've noticed that more and more people are, if I compare the 2000s, and here I'm talking about a general cultural zeitgeist. Like if I compare the 2000s to the 2010s to the 2020s, I think the question of religions become more powerful in the 2020s than in the 2000s. I think in the 2000s, most intellectually inclined, especially intellectually university educated people, didn't really take the question of religion very seriously, thought it should just be deconstructed and got rid of, we're going to overcome it. And there has been this trend throughout rational enlightenment modernity that religion's just going to go away, that we're eventually going to get beyond it. But I think that what I see in the 2020s, and the one thing that caught my eye about it was that a lot of younger people around me started to become more interested in religion. And so that threw me for a loop. And I think it's connected to this problem of isolation, and I think it's connected to this social problem, is that people are reaching for social technologies to connect with each other. And I think in our evolutionary history, in our actual, civilizational history, well, we did that through religion. So I think that we've lost now, irrespective of the metaphysical beliefs, which I don't actually think are, I mean, I think there are, of course, important aspects of metaphysical beliefs. I think that for the purposes of what we're talking about with the spiritual loneliness and the social loneliness that people feel, I think we do have to ask ourselves about how we create communal ritual, how we create social ritual. What and there's a really open challenge there. For me, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to go back to some pre-modern form of religion necessarily. But even though we can learn things from studying pre-modern religion, of course, because it was there for a reason, I think. But we do need to ask ourselves about, and we can ask ourselves this question within the context of our like modern liberal institutions, because also in our modern liberal institutions, in my old doctoral department, social relationships, friction would come up, and social relationships would break down so easily, and then people would just go their own way, and and things would break down in the department, and departments don't even speak to each other. Like there's a department merger that's going on in my old doctoral school, and they don't talk to each other, they don't go to lunch with each other. So we do, just on a certain basic level, and I think this is related to the human general intelligence, like that you have a bunch of specialized people in institutions who are very smart about a certain thing and have studied all their life about a certain thing. My master's supervisor could tell you everything there is to know about ring-tailed lemurs on this little island in Madagascar. But then if you asked her anything else about anything else, she would just, I don't know, I don't know. So, but I think that we have all this hyper specialized knowledge, but we've lost this. How can I generally be a human that's good at socially relating and interacting with other humans? How can we build context in which we come together in actually, and this is the thing I think that messes up our modern mind. It's not in a progressive buildup, like there's not like, and like take, for example, the technological singularity ideas of a cumulative buildup in technological capacity, like an exponential progress. The thing with social ritual and community is that it's not like that. It's not like this progressive linear to an exponential curve. It's just a repetition that happens. Like I just go to church every Sunday. It doesn't build up. I just go to church every Sunday. It's just a repetition. And there's something about the intellectual mind that struggles with that. It's just a quote unquote, it's a habit. It's just a built-in habit that I just do. Now, there's a danger there. I think that there are dogmas that can solidify there. But at the same time, there seems to be something necessary, I think, for familial reproduction, because there is something about familial reproduction that just requires um, dinner at 7 p.m. Dinner at 7 p.m., we're together, dinner at 7, and the screens are away. How we
Yes. I'd be very interested. Your thesis was on the global brain singularity. So how do all these factors come together? Do you still see hope for the formation of the global brain when we're experiencing all these challenges to coordinating and cooperating and biological evolution and balancing that with cultural evolution?
I hope I'm not quoting him incorrectly, but I recently watched an interview with Nick Bostrom about his new book on deep utopia. And he even said that in an ideal world where all of the deep technical problems are resolved by hypothetical future AGI, that the challenges of coordination would remain. And what I mean, like the challenges of human coordination, the challenges of political coordination. And actually, in my first meeting with Ben Goertzel, kind of was going hysterical about the social and political dimensions of AGI. And I think that it's precisely because AGI won't be like, it's almost like technology, industrial technologies in the last few centuries. They've brought us hyper close together, and we're evolutionarily predisposed, of course, to just being able to relate to a band or a tribe in our immediate local region. So even like, for example, and all this is just an ongoing crisis that's unfolding, but take, for example, what's going on in the United States right now with the tariff wars. I'm Canadian, so Donald Trump putting like tariff wars on Canada and tariff wars on the European Union and so forth. This is all a hysteria around our physical proximity to each other, that we're so close to each other that we don't know what to do with that proximity. And it's so overwhelming for us because we reach intractable problems. We reach impossible problems with the others that are different from us or have a different way of life than us and so forth. And now we're all thrown into it. The thing about the global brain is that we are in a global brain. The question is, how are we going to divide up the global brain? Like, I don't think we have a choice about being in a global brain at this point. I think the only question is, what are the different spheres and what are their relationships within the global brain, you know? So it's those types of things. And with, you know, like the tariff, you know, the example of the tariff war, it's a boundary. It's putting up a boundary. It's putting up a wall, and it's establishing a relationship through that wall, which is being done in a very strong man, big man ideological way, which is basically a power game and a power threat. Like, I want to get you to do what I want you to do in a zero sum way. So I'm going to like put you in an economically precarious situation so that you have no choice but to become the 51st state or something like that. Right. So it's, I just give that as an example of like, these are the types of human thing. And also, like, I want to say something about Trump in this, is that because the appeal of Trump, I think, is that he's not like a corporate robot, or he's not like a political robot. Like, he'll speak like a common everyday man. Like, he'll speak like the guy, your neighbor, but he's the president. And I think that there's something that people find attractive in the humanness of that, quote unquote, but it's obviously not the pinnacle of what we would like about humanity, but it's a symptom. It's a symptom, and I think it represents the challenge that we're going to be more and more confronting in the age of AGI, which is that we're going to be brought close together. We're going to be in one network, and we're going to be confronting social challenges and impossibilities that we've probably never confronted at that scale and at that speed. So I think that's why we need philosophy and we need the humanities, and at the same time, philosophy and the humanities are not also economically supported. I remember, or socially supported. I also remember that in the development of my career, where I would be asking professors about career decisions, and they would just say, you know, pick the more technical field, and the more specialized field, and the more general and the more human, the less economic social support. My journey.
Right. We don't value that. We value all the things that we have now built computers to be optimal at, you know,
Exactly.
building code.
It's a tremendous irony. It's a tremendous irony. And that's also one of the most interesting things I've learned studying philosophy, is that history and humanity and subjectivity is ironic. And unless you understand the irony of human history, and what I mean by that is that something extreme will always become its opposite. So we all think we should be specialized technical. So, like, example, we all think we should become specialized technical, but then when we all become specialized technical, we develop technology that can become hyper specialized. So then we have to become human general. And it's always this ironic oscillations that we deal with in history.
Being back around to what you were saying about bullying, you know, in the olden days and the modern bullying, and the sameness and the distinctions, but there's sort of a cultural resilience that has changed with some of the cultural evolution to modernity, and we are having trouble with this cultural resilience. And working with difficulty, one of the themes of our conversation, things that are uncomfortable, things that are unclear, things that aren't easy and frictionless. We find ways around it that don't necessarily help us grow into our most powerful human selves, that don't celebrate what it is that's uniquely human and interesting. I mean, not that human is the best thing ever. I very much look forward to AGIs that have their own synthetic thing going. But since we are human, how do we do that the best that we absolutely can? And so are we on a trajectory in the global brain to build, as we said at the beginning, a compassionate and abundant future?
There is a weird paradox here that I would like to bring up about compassion and abundance, and I want to reference the Buddha story for this. So, I mean, probably we all know the Buddha story to some degree, but the interesting thing about it is that the Buddha starts with abundance. The only thing I'm trying to do with that story is articulate a paradox of abundance and compassion, because Buddhism and the teachings of Buddhism also point towards, I know some friends who are practicing Buddhists, and they will say that it's all about loving compassion as the teaching. So I just want to say that there is a way in which when we clog ourselves with abundance, that we can become isolated from compassion to the other. So I'm certainly not saying that we should stop our striving for abundance, because also there's a really important teaching in that story as well, which is that actually the starting point of abundance for the character of the Buddha is a necessary starting point to break the illusion and to become spiritually enlightened. He didn't start homeless. He started as a son of a king. So metaphorically here, let's say, if we build a world in which more and more people have the starting condition of abundance, then we also create the social possibilities for us to crack that illusion of abundance and start the spiritual journey towards compassion. So I'm basically saying that this is not deterministic, that it's not deterministic in the sense that it depends on a choice that each of us will confront about what to do with the abundance that we've created as a species, as a historical civilization, and whether or not we can make the most of that abundance, which I think would be an orientation towards compassion, love, virtues that, of course, classically have been expressed in traditional religions. That's kind of what I would point towards, is this weird paradox that I think we're going to confront. And again, it's ironic. There's an irony there.
It's in the It's very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing all of that point. It reminds me of in Western societies, our classic midlife crisis. You get to a spot where you do have a successful career and you have the house and you have the family and you have everything looks like it's going, and you realize in yourself that what you have isn't abundance yet, right? And there can be the person who tries to fill that with a sports car and then the yacht, but there's the person also who toward the Buddha becomes spiritual or meditative or introspective and starts looking for something beyond that. So perhaps, we've compared AGI to parenting, we've compared AGI to youth. We've now, perhaps it's a midlife crisis, right? To, not just the maturation from teenage to adult, but when I become the conscious adult.
Yeah.
And
I
what's
think
meaningful.
that's connected to rethinking adulthood. That's our challenge and that crisis is a spiritual crisis is often required for opening up that rethinking process. I'll just say very quickly that I had an old high school friend who I always looked up to because he always excelled in everything he did. And I was sitting with him on his patio a few years ago, and he's got a great house, he's got a great car, he's got a great wife, he's got great kids. And we're just sitting on the patio, and we're in silence, and he just looked at me and he said, "Is this it? Is this it?" And his point, "Is this it?" is what I want to focus on, is because there's something that cannot be materially captured. There's something that cannot be rationally deduced. There's "is this it?" which is pointing towards not something positive, but some sort of perspective change on reality, which is called forth in a spiritual crisis and a spiritual journey that he was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Cadell. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you for touching on all these topics of beneficial AI, a beneficial future, becoming more human, AI to help us become more human, and hopefully by living into this abundance and this meaning, we can help AI itself discover these, what it means to be AI, AGI itself. So such an enjoyable conversation. I really appreciate you being here and joining us, and I look forward to more discussions in the future.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.